Hi everyone! So today we're doing a special piece. We're doing a psych review of 13 Reasons Why. So for those who don't know, I actually did a psych review of 13 Reasons Why, the first season, about 2 years ago. Can't believe it's already been that long. And I meant to do the second season. And then what I recognized was I started literally writing down notes for the first like 5 or 4 episodes, and I just found it so draining. Like it wasn't entertaining. I wasn't getting to enjoy the series. And I decided that it just kind of came on me again, and I was like, okay, I'm gonna watch it. And if at the end I feel like there's things to be said and things to discuss, and of course with 30 Reasons Why, there's always things to discuss because it's an amazing series. Um, I watched the last episode of the second season, which I'm pretty sure is like at least a year old. So for those who haven't seen it, there's going to be spoilers. And for those who haven't, seen it, there's going to be spoilers. And for those who have seen it, let me know in the comments if there's anything I missed that are really important, because I'm really going to be skimming to some degree. Really kind of talking about the profiles of some of the more popular persons. And of course, I'm going to kind of miss some other people, but bear with me. If you have comments, comment below and I'll answer them as we get to the end. So I made notes because Lord knows there's so much to be said about 13 Reasons Why. For those who don't know or don't remember, season 2 is looking at the court case of Hannah Baker's death, trying to basically find out if the school is liable or if it's not. And so basically the entire season is just about the court case, really. And then I've seen the trailer for the third season, which I probably will start this week. And it's now also about someone dies. And I'm not going to say who if you're only on the second season like me. And now I get a sense that the next season will just be all about this person dying and like another person dies. And it's about that. So let's go into it. Thank you for those who are on time. I'm sure we're going to fill up as we go along. And of course, as you guys know, comment below and share because it's interesting. I like doing these reviews a lot, actually. And so 30 Reasons Why season 2. So these are the themes that I've pulled out. Of course, there's going to be more, and I'm trying to make it very like layman and not like too psycho deep, but these are the themes I came up with. So of course, grief and loss. And I'm distinguishing grief and loss for a reason, which I'll explain later. Regret, resentment, silence, the concept of friendship, the concept of being a man, or the concept of being a part of a team. And I use a team specifically for a reason. Vulnerability, forgiveness, trust, loyalty, substance abuse, coping skills, stigma and discrimination, the concept of power or powerlessness, control, intimidation, manipulation, abuse, rape, and being bullied and bullying. So a lot of themes. I think it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 15. It's about 15 or 20. Of course, including fear and sacrifice. So there's about like 20 themes. Thumbs up if you agree with these themes. And of course, if I missed a theme or there's a question, you can always ask. Right. So let's start off with Clay. Now, Clay, I've only did a few notes for Clay because Clay has a lot more going on. Someone actually asked me to do a psychoanalyst of Clay for the fourth season for the first episode. I have no clue what happens, and I don't really want to go ahead to that season just to answer that question. So bear with me. You might get the answer done in like a month. Right. So Clay. The theme that we see a lot with Clay is grief, regret, confusion. Now, he's the only person who sees Hannah throughout the entire series. There's actually many times that I really wish Hannah would come and talk to some other people, but she doesn't. And the question is, why is only Clay seeing her? And it probably has to do with their closeness, the fact that he loved her and openly says he loved her. And the fact that she knows, I guess her spirit knows that he would be one of the people who would fight the hardest to get justice for her. So that's why Clay sees her. It's very interesting. If you ever notice, Clay cannot touch her, kiss her. If you ever notice, sometimes when they're actually sitting with a lot of distance. She doesn't ever really sit directly next to him. If she does, it's not skin to skin or anything. There's even a part where they try to kiss, and she's just like, and you can never kiss me again. Because that's the reality. When someone dies, we can have lots of dreams and wishes and fantasies to see someone, hug someone, kiss someone. And the reality is we'll never get the opportunity to. And all of these things build into why Clay has a lot of anger also. Anger should have been here as well as a theme. Because there's a lot of things that cannot be undone and a lot of regret. And that's why regret is there. And very interesting, you notice that sometimes when Clay is finding out all these new information, like about Zach and about Bryce, when Bryce goes on the stand and lies, he's like, tell me the truth. And he's so angry about it. But then you realize she can't tell him the truth, or she can't tell him any new information, because in reality, and it was really interesting that the writers did this, because she could have given him some more information. But the reality is she can't, because she's dead. And that is the truth. Most times, Guyanese have a saying, oh, the truth has come out after you're dead. And indeed, sometimes it does, but there's still a lot of unanswered questions. And that is actually what I tell a lot of my clients, is where grief is rooted in. A lot of grief sometimes is rooted in the fact that there's a lot of unanswered questions. And we see this a lot with Clay, especially. And we see grief, all the characters I'm going to go through have grief to some degree, and grief in varying ways at how they manage it or express it. And then we see Clay, going through a lot of his concept of loyalty, his concept of friendship is also there. He's constantly doing things, even risky things. In the first season, getting the crap beaten out of him to get the confession from Bryce. And so you see him making so many varying efforts to bring justice for Hannah. And so this is also why she continues to be there with him, because the reality is, in his mind, to bring justice for Hannah, he needs to do X amount of things. And because until the very end, when the court matter is done, you then see her walk through the door of the church after he's saying, which is interesting, he used that line that Sky gave him, which is, I can still love you and let you go. And so you see this happening, and there is a sense of, and she's talking about forgiveness. When can you forgive me? Can you ever forgive me? And he says no. And that's the other thing too, what grief is rooted in, letting go of the person, letting go of the fact, coming out of that denial stage of grief, whereby forgiveness is a burden almost on Clay throughout the series. And it's only when he gets to the church and the court case is done, there's that sense of completion, I guess, even though justice wasn't really served. But the effort is completed, I guess, in that sense. And so they can have the church ceremony, they can move on, and then he does forgive her, and you see her walk through the door, and there's all I knew they were going to do some kind of light effect to symbolize heaven. So that's definitely something to note. And then the last thing I wanted to note was there's a lot of questions or discussion. I had heard people talking about, why does he love Sky? And the one thing I took from that question is that, why does he love Sky? Because Sky is very similar to Hannah in the sense that she's somewhat broken. And I think that there was an attempt, maybe unconsciously for Clay, to save Sky the way he could not save Hannah. And so it's very important that we look at that dynamic as well with Sky, and him having to let go of her too as well, which I know was difficult for him. Oh my goodness. Can you guys hear my dog barking, please? Oh, good. Right. So I'm going to go on to Justin next. So Justin's themes include regret, loss. He still loves Jessica, even though he knows that they may never get back together. Sacrifice. Justin sacrifices a lot in this season. So you see him using a lot of drugs. And so why substance abuse is one of the themes is because for Justin specifically, his substance use with heroin is that escapism, that attempt to escape reality, basically that coping mechanism, that negative coping mechanism that he's used to escape reality. Because the reality is, Justin has a lot of regret and a lot of loss because of his mistake in the first season with basically not protesting enough with Bryce when Bryce went to rape Jessica, which talks about also his concept of friendship and loyalty and being a part of the team. He carries that regret with him and the grief of the loss of the relationship that he had with Jessica because of that decision. And so that's why he runs away. That's why he ends up on the streets. That's why he ends up using drugs. Because in Justin's case, he's constantly trying to escape reality. And the thing is, Justin's reality is very broken as well. He lived at home with a drug user mother and an abusive boyfriend who also beat the crap out of Justin several times. So it's not uncommon for a character like Justin to abuse drugs at any point in time. He leaves the Jensen house. So another question was like, well, why would he run from the Jensen's house when he had it so good? One of the reasons why you would see a character like Justin running from the Jensen's house was he probably felt like he didn't want to make any problems for this picture perfect home, which is the Jensen home. But he also, a character like Justin, there is also some lowered self-esteem. So I think also he did not believe that he was deserving of having a happy home like the Jensen. And so he would have ran away because a core belief would be that he does not deserve this opportunity. So that would have been also another reason to run away. And then lastly with Justin is sacrifice. Lots and lots of sacrifices. Once he comes back and he's cleaned up, he sacrifices himself, knowing the consequences that if he went on the stand and talked about Bryce, that he could be caught up in the legality of what Bryce did as a bystander, basically, an accomplice to the rape. And so he sacrifices that for his love for Jessica. And of course, this, I think, is grounded in his regret. And so you see that he does that to help Jessica, even though it doesn't go particularly the way it should go. And even Justin says, like, man, one of the guys says to him, aren't you mad that you got 6 months probation and Bryce only got 3? And he's like, I'm not surprised, because Justin is very clearly aware of the socioeconomic difference between him and Bryce coming from a family of power and a family of distinction and family of money. Right. Jessica, we see a lot of grief as well, fear, vulnerability, confusion, fear, scared, and powerlessness. Now, we see this with her constant. Now, Jessica never formally goes to therapy other than when she is, well, none of them really formally go to therapy, only the times when they really need it. And so Jessica finally gets to go to the support group for rape survivors. But essentially, Jessica is in denial. She's having flashbacks. She says that she doesn't know her rapist, but then she's basically suppressing the memories that she's having. And then she is constantly battling with those flashbacks and like wanting to forget, and then not wanting to report Bryce, because she is also aware of the socioeconomic difference between her and Bryce. She even says it, like, look what they did to Hannah. And by that she means a white working class person, even though I get the sense that Jessica has a similar, a higher or the same socioeconomic status as Hannah. She is also suggesting that because she's mixed with black, or that she's black, that she would be completely discredited and that she'd be taken through the ringer because of also her own lack of power and her own lack of access and knowing the right lawyers and money. So she understands that going toe-to-toe with Bryce would be not a strong case. And like, look what they did to Hannah. The one thing that we definitely also see is her own flashbacks, her own grief with how she handled her friendship with Hannah, whether it was the interaction with her, Alex, and Hannah, or even her, Justin, and Hannah. And so there's a lot of, I think, regret there and, sadness regarding that. Now, she says that the one thing I took away definitely from when Jessica finally, is able to get the courage together and realize that she has like a whole team backing her when she has to go and make the report against Bryce, is that once the her court case starts, she says that that she actually feels stronger having now made the report and did the court sitting, even though it didn't end the way that she would have liked. Now, why is that important? Because I think there was a lot of powerlessness and vulnerability and fear in the character of Jessica, and a lot of trauma and a lot of guilt. And so she is worried and consumed by the what ifs and how might this go, to the point where she holds off from doing almost the entire season, and then she does in the last like 3 episodes, and so 2 episodes. And so she realizes that through having a support system of friends, having supportive family, having even the support group that she went to for survivors, and meeting Nina, who also has her own story, that you have to be able sometimes to take that risk of reporting your abuser or reporting your rapist, and having to go through the process, which is a system that is not catering for survivors, right? And so I think that that's a major takeaway from Jessica. And we see how even she looks different in that last episode. She looks more lighter, brighter, confident, and stuff like that. I don't know if that is just how they intended to. Very clearly, she's still in love with Justin. And some people be like, how could she still be in love with Justin? He allowed Bryce to rape her. The thing is, it's complicated. And I think she understands the complex relationship Justin and Bryce had. And so that makes her still confused. And that's why I have confused here as one of the themes. Very confused about how to approach this. It's like, you allowed your best friend to rape me. Because you didn't have a spine, or because you felt powerless as well to your own best friend, but here I am still loving you. So it's very, very complicated. The Jessica-Justin relationship is going to be very complicated, I think, and if it continues for the rest of the next season, it's going to be continue to be complicated. Alex, we see a lot of grief, loss for sure, vulnerability, and powerlessness. Now, after Alex shot himself, he loses a lot of his mobility on his left side, almost just like if you had had a stroke. And he is grieving, just like everyone else, the decisions of how he handled the relationship with, friendship with Hannah. He's grieving the loss of his mobility, because we have to look at grief as a loss of anything, not just death of someone. And so we have to look at the loss of mobility, the loss of even his sexual desires and the drive when he tries to masturbate. Look how angry he gets. And then actually in the last episode, you hear him tell Zach, oh, I jerked off like 3 times today. And it was like a huge deal for him, because about 6 months prior, he could not get an erection. And that was a huge impact on his self-esteem and ego at that time. So we do see that that is a major thing. His loss of friendships. And then you see him really also grieving the fact that because of his decision to shoot himself, he lost mobility. And in the time when you look at when he tries to save Justin, when Justin almost OD and died, he is literally struggling physically and mentally to pull Justin off of the bed so he doesn't choke on his own vomit. And that was, you can see the pains in Alex and the frustration that he almost could not save his friend. And even in the gang fight, the big gang fight with everybody near the end, he watched on, also I'm sure feeling helpless at one point in time because he could not, and then he just was like, forget it, I'm just gonna try my best. And he comes over and like one of the guys is choking Zach, and he like hits the guy over his I think it's Monty, hits him over the back with his stick, because that is his only way of empowerment. That is his own way. The stick has actually symbolically been holding him up, and literally been holding him up. And so that is what he chooses, because that is really one of his only options for feeling empowered and feeling a part of the struggle as well. Throughout the throughout the entire season, Alex is dealing with the loss of his memory and the confusion with what part did he play in Hannah's death. And as we find out later on, he was actually in the pool house when Hannah was being raped in the hot tub. And he even remembers like making insensitive comments about whoever's out there with Bryce at this hour is a really like desperate, and I think he says slut, right? So without even knowing. Now, one of the things I want to point out with Alex that is really important for me, at least, is I had an article about this I posted out, which is the effects of attempting suicide. And one of the effects that the article mentioned was how people don't really trust you anymore. They don't trust you to like take care of kids. They don't trust you to take on excessive stress or worry, so they even hide things from you. And we see this in the series because after Alex did try to kill himself, his parents wouldn't allow the door to be closed. And they even had like a discussion, if you remember, it has to be like 45 degrees open at all times. And then they had a discussion where he's like, no, I got it down to 30. And then the guy was like, no, well, this is like 10. And so there was like very much monitoring Alex. And this is a problem with when people don't realize that people don't trust you after you've attempted to harm yourself, because it's like, well, what is the chances you're going to do it again? And so now they had to, and by the parents doing these rules of not ever being alone, don't lock your door, you have to keep it open even when you're doing homework. This is their own fears and trauma being projected back onto Alex with like the right intention, but the fact is that's their own trauma projection onto Alex, to be quite honest. But it's something very important, I thought, to note. Tyler. Now, Tyler. I saw this coming. By like the second episode of season 2, I knew that this was going to end this way. Once he met Cyrus, I knew that was going to happen. This power of the people, white antagonist, whatever. I figure you call it. And you see the A on it when they spray paint the baseball park. That A, I forget what you call it. You've seen it during the Black riots now. You've seen it during the protesting now in America. I forget. My mom always says the word and I forget it. I'll remember it. But it's anarchist, that's it. Right. So Cyrus and them are anarchists, down with the system and all that kind of thing. So I knew this was going to. Tyler is an interesting person in the sense that he suffers from loss of power, fear, confusion about who his friends groups are, being bullied all the time, the stigma of being the like social pariah, never really fitting in with a group, and finally it's in a group and it goes to crap. And then last but not least, if you haven't seen the season, he is raped. Now that rape scene was probably even more graphic than Hannah's own. And it is very much a trigger if you are specifically a male who has experienced sexual assault. And so be very mindful of that. Tyler was a walking time bomb. He was bullied, he was beaten, he was shoved up to lockers, he was considered a social pariah, he was considered a stalker. There was so much stigma towards him being like the photographer, so you can never have peace because Tyler's always going to be there and he's going to catch you. You know, and then the thing is like, it's very interesting. Tyler does not fit the model, or what we believe to be the model, or the stereotype of a mass shooter. in the sense of he has good parents who care about him, who have structure and rules and punish him, with taking away his video games and even cameras. So he doesn't fit that model. And so that was very interesting to me that I like how the series did that. It breaks that normative concept of what a killer is or what a mass shooter for school looks like, right? And so I knew that it was gonna happen that way. Now, the one thing takeaway with Tyler, I would say, to me that stood out is when he finally found Cirrus, and when he finally went on that date with Mac, I think Cirrus' sister, that could have been the make or break of that entire way that season ended with Tyler. There was a moment where I was watching, don't wait, embrace love, embrace that these are your friends, be vulnerable, it's okay. And I knew that once I saw him like tell off Mac at the rock concert, that was it. I knew he was gonna go rogue. And then he went into the program, and I was like, okay, let's see how this is gonna go. He comes back, he speaks very briefly with the counselor, and then he goes back. He's trying so hard. He went back to Mac and was like, do you want to go to the dance with me? And she'd already moved on. So here comes in that first kind of break of all the work he's done. And then, last but not least, that incident where he is raped. That was it. That was the straw that broke the camel's back. That was the definition of powerlessness. He literally, and the thing is, which really saddened me, was that at that point in time, at least by the end of that series, that's the last season, that last episode, there is so much evidence for that rape. Like, there's a broken mirror, there's literally the mop stick and it has blood on it, and he's bleeding and his face is banged up. There was this moment where I was just like, just Tyler, just call somebody, like, oh my God, just do the right thing. And I say this as someone watching on an objective person, but I am not in Tyler's body at that point in time. There's so much shock, physically and emotionally and psychologically. You start to disassociate right after, just to keep from the shock. And so I was just like, there's so much evidence, just do it right then. But no, there are times there's just this automatic reaction to trauma, which is to disassociate and to pretend like it didn't happen and all that kind of stuff, which is so natural. And it's our body's way of protecting us. It's our brain's way of protecting the host when trauma happens. And I just so badly wish it had gone another way. And when Clay tries to stop Tyler at the dance, there's this moment where he's like, we can do something. That last line before Tyler takes down the gun, he's like, there's something, we can do something about it. And I'm just like, yes, please tell me in the next season Tyler does something about it. And then I was like, oh my God, Tony, right? Which is what we're going on to next. But Tyler is a huge thing to talk about because of his foundation of loneliness, his foundation of feeling not a part of something, his emptiness, him trying to cope with the photography, but it never being enough. And that's why when you see he brings out the guns and you watch the character change and you see the powerfulness and this sense of control come back with his kind of gun, you knew right in there, this is not good, this is not going good. Because here is someone who has access to guns, and guns is a coping mechanism. And that moment when he shoots the bird and he realizes like, whoa, I could shoot something, and he's like, 30 seconds ago it was alive. I knew. I just watched that and was like, yep, he's gonna do a mass shooting. And I thought it was gonna be at the school, right? That was a huge determining factor, that break from Cirrus and his group of friends. Oh Lord, how long are we in? Am I doing okay? Alistair, I see you there. I can't tell who the other person is, I think. I'm not sure who that is. Right. So Tony, I'm going to try and finish up soon. Tony, stigma, coping, anger, loyalty, friendship, regrets due to his anger, and silence. He keeps Hannah's secrets throughout all of this. Tony is someone I feel very concerned for because he carries a lot of burden. And because of his machismo-ness, and then he's hiding being gay, to some degree, like, there's a lot of energy going on in Tony and a lot of burden. And so Tony is completely loyal to Hannah, to Mrs. Baker, to Alex, and to the concept of just justice overall. A lot of times when you see like Tony losing his crap and beating people up, like in the case when him and Ryan were on the street and they called him faggots, Tony just lost his stuff because clearly his basic human need is justice and respect. And so if that is mishandled, he's gonna lose his crap. He helps out Justin, even though he didn't like Justin. He helps out Clay. He helps out Mrs. Baker. He even helped out Tyler in the end. Like, you guys realize that anything that could been like implicated Tony, he would have gone to jail. And he does all of this selfless. He does this sacrifice because of the concept of friendship and loyalty. He finds partner, but you always realize he finds partners, but he's always very reserved, does not do PDA. He's always worried. And I think this stems from like his discrimination, his fair discrimination and fair stigma, and also he's Latino. And so there's that as well in terms of like machismo, but are you also going to bring home a girl, and when and why? And then you're looking at his fear of vulnerability. So Tony is a hard nut to crack, but you got to love him anyway. Mr. Baker. Now I'm going to handle Mr. Baker because Mrs. Baker's reactions and her behavior are completely normal of someone who just lost their child and lost their child to suicide, to be quite honest. Her going through the diaries and the letters and trying to assess things and reading the same article, poem that she wrote, Intruder, 1,000 times. Those are all very normal. Cutting your hair off. Again, all seeking solace in someone who is a like bully and sexual assault advocate. That's pretty normal. So I'm not really going to talk so much about Mrs. Baker. Mr. Baker, however, Hannah, he deals with grief, regret, and confusion. He knew that Hannah saw his affair. They had the discussion. We see this. And what I love about the second season is they added in so many more details. I was like, what more can we find out? Like, I was like, where does this episode go after Hannah kills herself? And I had no clue 2 years ago this is where I was going to go. Now, he deals with grief different from Mrs. Baker. They all deal with grief differently. And he deals with it by avoiding it. And you see him in denial and suppressing a lot of stuff in general. And the major takeaway from Mr. Baker is he moves on to another family. Not only does he move on to another family before it's even a year before Hannah's been passed away, but he moves into a family that has another daughter. Single daughter, that's it. So it's almost like symbolic. Mr. Baker gets a do-over. Whereas in the end, we find out Mrs. Baker ends up doing something in the name of Hannah, which is moving to New York, which is where she said she wants to go. Right? So, and for him, he said, you know, I need even in the middle of the trial, he's like, I need a divorce. And she's like, you want to marry him? You want to marry her? And he's like, no, I just need to close this chapter. So in his way of grief and dealing with things, he needs to close chapters. He needs to end it, severance. And so in his mind, he severed the whole life that he had before, which was losing Hannah and his wife and everything. And so that's his very extreme way of dealing with it. And it's I just really think that that symbolism, when I saw him go to hug his girlfriend and I saw a little girl run down and you see Mrs. Baker's face, I'm just like, oh my God, this man got a do-over with a whole new identical family. So any wrongdoings that he missed with Hannah, any of the times he didn't get to talk to her about things, he now gets to do it over. And it's so interesting how like men can do that in their 50s, but women can't. Because we can't have another kid at like 50, right? So it's very important, that symbolism. Zach. Grief, regret, confusion, loyalty, friendship, his silence, and then his sacrifice later on, resentment towards people like Bryce and the rest of the team, and also this concept of being a man. I generally really like Zach. And someone even says near the end at the ball, Justin says to Zach, you would have been good for Hannah. And I really believe that. I really do. When I had no clue they had a relationship, you only find that out in the second season. But when I saw what I saw, I really think that they would have been good together, or really good for her first relationship, to be quite honest. He does the right thing in the end, but like, I feel like one of Zach's issues is he's constantly dealing with this sense of like spineless. I always feel like there's an issue with Zach and his level of cowardness and lacking a spine until the very end. And, finally leaving a group of people that he did not like and who did not respect him. And so I generally think he was a good guy, just misguided. Keeps the relationship with Hannah quiet and a secret. Why? Because he knew that them guys would infiltrate his relationship. And so I think that that is like a major thing to recognize, that he realized that he had to keep it quiet because them guys would make it hard for him. Of course, she doesn't understand that. It just looks like he's hiding her, which of course is natural for any woman to think that. Eventually, he aligns with Clay and Alex, which is really where he should have been the whole time because he's kind of a nice guy. And then battles with this concept of, being a man and being a part of the team, which Bryce constantly reminds him of. Now, next thing, the last, 2 people. That's it. I promise. I hope you have questions at the end of all of this. Oh my God. Oh my goodness. I'm now seeing comments. Holy crap. Oh, 1 second. What happened there? I did not touch the phone. Okay. Holy crap. I'm now seeing comments. I just scrolled down. Okay. Bryce. And then I'm going to do Mr. Porter. I'm going to save Mr. Porter for last because there's a whole other thing with that. Bryce. I'm not going to go into Chloe. Chloe has her own stuff going on. Bryce. Power. Control, manipulation, these are the themes. Intimidation, vulnerability, concept of friendship, loyalty, a man, and being a part of a group, a team. Bryce, first and foremost, lacks remorse, which is a scary thing. Very scary. He lacks remorse, he craves attention and power, and because of this, because he lacks his parents. His parents haven't given him attention in however long. And so he constantly is trying to be the cool kid and the kid who has the friends and the kid who's empowered and, that kind of thing. It's all about image. It's all about this concept of faking it till you make it, right? If I keep doing it enough, I will be empowered. If I keep doing enough, I will be the man, right, that I want to be. Now, the other thing about Bryce is that a part of this facade is that he probably knows that his friends are really only his friends because they're all in it together in terms of their wrong behavior, like the clubhouse. And so he even says this, we're now brothers, we're in this together. And so this is, and someone even, I think Justin in the last couple episodes, I think the third one or whatever, the last 3, he talks about, he's doing the monologue, the narrative, and he's saying Bryce only feeds off of his concept of loyalty. And so I think that it's really important to see how loyalty plays in. And if you really study psychology and you look at narcissism, things like loyalty, like Trump, can you see any comparatives, parallels between Trump and Bryce Walker? Very interesting. I just thought of that. Now, my thing, I feel like the demand of the power and the control through forceful, inappropriate behavior, rape, and so on, expected. The court glasses, that is typical manipulation. And you see him manipulate Chloe so many times. And the intimidation of his friends and his enemies, always reminding them that we're in it together, always reminding that we're a team and we're brothers. These are all manipulation tactics, intimidation tactics. And so he has a lot of people like Monty. Justin finally broke away from it, but Monty is still hooked in there. Monty even says, I don't have nothing. I don't have anything if I don't have Bryce in the team. This is not even about sports. This is about friendship and connection and not feeling empty and alone. Everybody in this series is having an issue with being alone and emptiness and suffering in silence. And even we kind of get a peek into what Bryce could actually be if he wasn't a freaking jerk. When he's telling the story in the court about how Hannah took him to the bridge and how Hannah's monologue is that, oh, your life is so peculiar, you could just be driving on the bridge one day and it'll go splat. That was his words, because when he's drinking and sitting by himself, he realizes that those were his words. And so you get a moment like, oh my God, you are actually vulnerable. And then he like shakes it off, you know? So like, it's just amazing to understand that below that hard exterior, just like Tony is a very squishy, palatable person who does not want to be alone, you know. And you see Hannah telling him in the clubhouse, oh, you have such a perfect life. And he's like, well, not really. So those are the few moments. And I think that's why he like disliked Hannah to some degree, because she was one of the people who got into him, got to him, got him to be vulnerable, got him to be mushy, which he's uncomfortable with because he's put on this facade for so long, right? Oh, manipulation, Chloe. These are the two times I saw for sure. When the pressure starts to come on and Chloe starts to hear about these attempted rapes, she starts to pull away. And then he comes and sits down on the lunch table with her and he starts talking about, I'm sorry. And he puts on this fake remorse, which is so crazy because that's really narcissism at its best. And he's like, and then he throws in this bait of going to Italy. And this is a part of that honeymoon phase. If you think of like an abusive cycle, if there's some uneasiness, you're always going to get back this honeymoon phase, get back to the honeymoon phase. And would you see this cycle with Chloe and Bryce? And then, last but not least, the second time when he manipulated her was like when after Chloe could not tell the truth in the court about, yes, that Bryce had raped her before they were together, or even when they were together, he says, again, in this false remorse in the library, you know I love you, right? And so that is so cliche, typical of an abusive person. So, like, Bryce is a hot mess. I could do a whole video on Bryce and Tyler alone. I think he gets a lot of his influence from his father. Like, you remember when they were doing brunch and he's like, a woman is someone not to be messed with and to be respected, and you have to like figure out how to do that. And I think that because he knows his father is, you know, expecting certain things, he does certain things. And his mother is becoming more and more suspicious of the behaviors until she confronts him. And she does that because she knows her husband. She knows that her husband has trained and conditioned him to be a certain way. And his father's probably a sleazeball just like him, to be quite honest. So she knows what she's married, and she knows that her son is not perfect. And he was, and then if you notice, the same way that Bryce was guilting Chloe, his father said that to the mother. You're his mother, for Christ's sakes. Do you think he could do this? That is typical guilting. That is typical gaslighting. Yes, I think I've tried to raise my son good enough, but yes, he could be a rapist. Last but not least, Mr. Porter. I did Mr. Porter last because as a professional, I feel like I felt it for him to some degree. Mr. Porter, his themes are guilt, regret, resentment, the system is against him, all that kind of stuff. And so Mr. Porter, I really feel for him. You see him in the court, you see him break down, you see him dealing with the systematic socioeconomic dynamics of like the school and stuff like that, and being bullied himself even as a grown-up against the coach and stuff like that. So Mr. Porter has his own issues. I feel for him because Lord knows the last thing that any counselor or someone who's put in charge of taking care of people's well-being would never want anything would happen to Mr. Porter to happen to me. And so I felt it for him. It made me very scared as well. It made me want to, thank you, try harder. My mom put on my lights. Try harder as a therapist. And so I think it's really important that like we understand that Mr. Porter in himself lost a great deal of dignity and trust for his own decisions and self-respect and just sense of being. Your identity is corrupted if your one job is to save people and you couldn't do that, you know, because something just went wrong. The phone rang. You didn't try harder. You didn't put your foot down harder. So I can definitely feel for Mr. Porter. Okay, that is it from me for my notes. I could not go on anymore. I was writing all of this and I was like, oh my God, I'm totally over this. Right. Let's look at all the comments. But season 4 has definitely been different. Ooh, exciting. I've got Alistair. Another reason Justin was broken is because of Bryce, a brother to him after taking care of him for so long. Now I'm to witness Bryce raping. Yes, of course. That was a huge part of what broke Justin for sure. To some extent, I believe he was in fear to believe Bryce had raped. I think he was more fearful of confronting Bryce because it meant losing that one friend or that brother figure. And remember Bryce's concept of loyalty, he would know that by now. He knows that you don't talk or you don't defy or you don't confront the alpha in the group, which is Bryce. So I think it was just fear of also Bryce. I think they're all scared of him. One of the many issues of the role of Tony is normal for persons of Latin American descent. Latin families, often of very religions, do not accept persons who are LGBTQ. So he has that. Yes, of course. Definitely. Zach has similar issues. Yep, he is Asian. He's upper class. He lost his father. He's supposed to be the man of the family now. Zach has similar issues with Tony. Zach, being of Asian descent, came with responsibility of what the parents set out for him to accept. Of course, definitely. Zach's bond with Hannah allowed him to feel liberated outside of his normal circle of he associated himself with. Even I thought him and Hannah would have made a good couple if it allowed to get that far. Definitely. And I also think that a protective factor like a positive partner may have helped Hannah. I don't know how much that would have. And I thought that for a second, like if Hannah and Zach had gotten together, would she have killed herself? Maybe still, but at least maybe that factor, that may have been on one of the reasons why that list at the end we see at the wake. There's the issue of the football team itself. Too often games like football enable a behavior as a cult. Yep. Support and not betray anyone on the team. Yep. And then Mr. Porter, it pained me that as a school counselor, he didn't truly listen to this. Yeah, like I was just like, when I watched the season, when I was watching that actual session, I thought, why would you say that? Why would you say it like that? And I just was very much disappointed. And then you see the ramifications. Like people don't understand what it's like to be a counselor or a therapist. Like there are huge ramifications if our psyche is off, or our mental health is off, or we're tired, or we don't want to believe, or so many things can impact our clients' lives if we are off. So I definitely felt like that mistake or those mistakes on the day of the session was going to stay with him for the rest of his life and even the rest of his career. Because how do you now, like he gets fired, how do you now go on to another job? How do you tell, especially now how big the Hannah Baker case became, how do you move on to another school without leaving like the county and saying, well, why did you leave your last school? Well, you know the Hannah Baker case? Yeah, I was a counselor. Like how do you get a job after that? Right? So it's huge liability. And how much that impacts your life after it's said and done. So, okay. Are there any more questions? Alistair, thank you for all of your feedback. So wonderful. Clearly, you've been watching the series. And you're saying that how number 4 is different too, which means you've watched number 4 season. I'm jealous. But I hope you guys enjoyed this. I know it might be long. I have a feeling it's long. I'm sorry for that. But do take a chance to listen back or share it out. Or if anyone else is watching 13 Reasons Why, definitely, if you haven't watched it, you could start watching it and then watch back the first review I did on YouTube and this review and then tell me what I missed. There's tons of things, little things that we miss all the time. You know, like for example, someone was like I thought to myself, how did Mina get the box? And I'm like, oh yeah, Mina knew because she saw the picture. So she went and broke into the Clay's car. Why would she burn it? Because that's Mina's way of being in denial. And she says that to Jessica. And Jessica says it, once you say it, it's real. And a lot of survivors have said that, and victims. You know, once you say it, it becomes true. And so why Mina burnt the pictures was her own way of not being ready yet to confront what happened to her, but at the risk of suppressing the right to other victims to come forward as well. Right? So everything has a circular meaning and impact in this group of the school. It's really amazing. Okay, guys, thank you for listening. Thank you for checking in, even if it was just like 5 minutes. I hope you guys like it. Comment below any other questions, and I will probably do, if this is a really good question, I'll probably just do a live just on that. Thank you so much, and have a good Sunday. Keep watching, and of course, if any of these things trigger you guys, give me a message or call me on 629-0809. That is the work phone. So if you need support or there's something that's triggering you from 13 Reasons Why, definitely give me a message and we can talk. Okay? Know that there's support out there even when we're trying to go through our own stuff. Take care and have a good Sunday.